Hi, this is Rick Ferrone with InformedEntrepreneur.com, doing our weekly cash flow series. We are here today with Pete Markakos, Managing Principal of EDC Consulting. Hi, Pete, and welcome.
Rick, hi, thanks.
Thank you for taking the time to meet with us.
My pleasure.
So, Pete, could you tell us a little bit about EDC Consulting and what it is you do?
Sure. EDC Consulting specializes in providing ERP and business systems implementation and integration services. So specifically, we work with SAP, Oracle, and PeopleSoft software products, in addition to a number of other software suites that support financial, logistics, and HR software throughout the defense community, the civilian and federal sector, as well as state and local intelligence clients, and even commercial and private sector clients as well.
Okay. Pete, what percentage of your business do you think is from the federal government versus private sector?
A solid 80% of my work represents federal government work. I will also add that in addition to the ERP work, which is the enterprise resource planning work, that's the SAP, Oracle, and PeopleSoft work. We've, as byproducts of those projects involving ERP, we've gotten quite capable in providing services such as enterprise architecture, information assurance, portfolio management, independent verification and validation, which is IB&V, and so we do those. We actually provide those services as well.
Okay. How did you get started in this business?
Well, EDC Consulting was born. We're a relatively newer company. We were born in 2005, so we're relatively young. I came from big business. My background personally is with large companies. I worked for companies like SAP, PricewaterhouseCoopers, IBM, and KPMG. So I came to EDC Consulting. I started EDC Consulting with a big business mentality. So I was surrounded by defense contractors when I was at companies like IBM and SAP, and I learned the business pretty much from a big business mindset.
Okay. Do you think that big business mindset is one of the reasons you've been so successful?
Absolutely. In fact, by sheer ignorance, it's the only thing I knew. So by starting a small business, the only way I knew how to run a small business is as a big business. For example, one of the first things I did right out of the chute is implement a DCAA financial system, DCAA compliant financial system. I surrounded myself with people who were experts in this business, people who knew this business and were veterans of the federal marketplace. I also very quickly brought in some key players to build a strong core team around me, and I got to the point where I built pretty good teams, pretty good groups of individuals that were experts in providing business development, proposals, capture support, and also recruiting, etc. So I definitely took the principles of how big business operates and took it into the small business environment.
When you were in the big business world, did you run a division or a team? Because it sounds like you brought that almost like you were starting a whole other division.
Sure. That's pretty much the mentality that I had. I came from, I was a director of business development and a director of sales for large companies, and I took that same mindset into my small business. I will also add that my background is as a 20-plus year Marine Corps officer, and I was able to take a lot of what I learned in the Marine Corps, add it to what I learned in the private sector, and transfer a lot of those military skills, combine them with my experiences in the private sector to build what was the small business.
Okay. One of the things that struck me the first time I met you was you had mentioned to me when you started the business, I think it was you had a 6-year stretch where you doubled revenues.
We did.
How were you able to do that?
Sure. I mean, I'll tell you that, I'd like to give you, the secret sauce and the secret formula, but the fact is that it comes down to a few things. It comes down to hard work, patience, perseverance, and just keeping your eye on the ball. You have to be completely focused as a small business while you're growing. There was, just not too long ago, as recently as 5 to 7 years ago, I think it took maybe 1 to 2 years to get a small business off the ground. That game has completely changed right now. I think it takes a solid 3 to 4 years
Okay.
to build a small business, and throughout that time, if you're not dedicated, committed, and focused on the goal of building your small business, it's going to take longer and longer. So it truly takes a laser-focused approach to build a small business.
Why do you think it's gone from 1 to 2 years to 3 to 4 years? What's changed?
Part of it has to do with the business climate we're in, the economy in general. I will say that as a federal government contractor, I will tell you that we're somewhat insulated from the rest of the economy. However, we do see those budget cuts. We do see a variety of market forces and dynamics that are a direct result of an economy that is very different than it was just say 5 to 7 years ago. So it's had a fairly significant impact to us, and so we have to just simply adjust.
Okay. Follow-up question on that. You had mentioned you were a big business. How much time did you spend planning or strategizing or getting that clear focus before you left big business to start this?
Great question. So leading into EDC Consulting, I spent a lot of long nights, coming up with the game plan. I think preparation with anything is key. So in addition to doing all the things that you need to do to build a small business, establishing a small business plan, a strategy, a vision, a mission, guiding principles, a vision, etc. I didn't just use those. Those weren't cliches, but we actually had a method. We had a process that we wanted to put in place, and that's exactly what we did. We created a roadmap, and we followed the roadmap, and it took us to where we wanted to be, fairly quickly. We were able to hit our milestones in terms of revenue and in terms of productivity. I think having a solid roadmap in place really put us where we wanted to be.
Okay. So we focused on your big business background. How much do you think your time in the Marine Corps, and I think you're still involved in the Marine Corps.
I'm still a reserve officer, right?
How much of that do you credit with your success?
Significantly. I mean, I think, quite frankly, I would not be here today. I'd be doing something very different if it wasn't for my military experience. Military is a unique environment. I would recommend anyone, any young person, any college graduate to pursue. You don't have to be a career officer or a career military person, but spending some time in the military gives that individual just incredible experiences, incredible opportunities to develop their leadership skills, to be able to interact, manage, and lead large groups of people. I think at the same time, you truly learn what it takes to what work ethic means, and just plain old hard work. I think you learn the value of that in the military, and to me, that's just been absolutely invaluable. So a combination of that plus my business experience, I think, has been pivotal to lead me to where I am today.
Okay. Last question. Most entrepreneurs have that light bulb moment where they think, I can do this or I can make this work.
Sure.
Did that happen at big business? Did it happen when you're in the Marine Corps thinking some of these skills would translate to running a business? When did the light bulb go on?
Sure. I think all along, even while I was in the military, I have 20 plus years in today, but I was one of those guys that went in the military expecting to be out in a few years, maybe 4 years later, and I actually hung around for obviously much longer than that. I've always been very business-minded. I've always been very entrepreneurial, and I knew that at one point I will be in the private sector, and I guess it was the culmination of a long-term plan for my time in the military and my time working for other big companies that allowed me to process a plan, establish a plan for me to go out and try to do it myself.
Okay. Last question. You obviously had a huge run of success in growing the company. As companies get bigger, the growth rates tend to slow down.
Sure.
How do you keep this growing?
Great. Yeah, great question. In fact, we're experiencing that problem right now. Diversification is absolutely critical. We're very tuned into which business areas we can expand within the company, what areas we can grow, what markets we can tap. We've already started to do that, actually. Our core competency for the last 5 to 7 years has been, as I mentioned, ERP, this SAP, Oracle, and PeopleSoft support, and obviously we do much more than that, but pretty much for the most part it's been ERP. We're expanding in new areas. We're doing different types of work for different types of clients, and we do that out of necessity, but at the same time it's refreshing, and quite frankly it's fun to start doing different things for different clients. So it's a fun challenge to undertake.
Okay. So when you're doing that and you're making that shift, you talk about this initial mission and game plan, if you will. Do you change that game plan annually? Do you change it every few years?
You do revise the game plan as you need to. I think 80% of the core game plan will stay in place. Mm-hmm. You absolutely will make tweaks to the plan, and you'll adjust your vision slightly, but the foundation of that plan remains in place. We're focused on growth. We're going to continue to be focused on the growth of the company and invest into the company. And I think that's the secret formula for us for continued growth.
Okay, great. That concludes our interview for today. I want to thank Pete again for his time and much continued success.
A pleasure, Rick. Thanks.
It was good. All right.